And welcome back to Clutch Time. Today we are talking about some lottery picks coming up here in the SWBA draft. And we're going to be talking about how Hoopsteria can either help their draft stock or if it can hurt their draft stock. We're going to be talking about how Hoopsteria ties into these lottery picks moving forward with their career. And so let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And so the topic, to be exact here, is what do top potential number one draft picks need to do in Hoopsteria? And so the answer to that is they just need to hoop. I don't think that there's anything special that any of these players that are slated to be top picks in the SWBA draft need to necessarily do. I don't think that it's necessarily the focus is on them, but I think really the players that are going to serve the biggest benefit from this tournament are going to be players that they are in between the first and the second round. They're players that they could be a first rounder this day. They could be a second rounder this day. And so I think by going out in Hoopsteria, if you're able to put together, this last month of the season, so to speak, in front of everybody nationally, those are the players that really are going to benefit the most in Hoopsteria. I just think that the players that we've been talking about really throughout the year, just bringing an example up here, like a CKC or Jalen Snow or a Jamison Johnson or Lamarian Sherwood, I think that scouts have made up their mind for the most part. Now, I think that there is going to be a situation in where they could slide maybe after Hoopsteria, especially when they meet with teams formally, right? So they have those interviews. Maybe the interviews don't go well. Maybe there's something that becomes something where they go, no, that's a red flag. We don't want to go ahead and draft them. I think that that's something that can happen. They could go out there pre-draft, in the combine and just not test well for whatever reason. And so, maybe they're not as quick as they thought. The vertical wasn't there, whatever. Those things like that certainly will matter because that's a little bit more focused right there. But when it comes down to Hoopsteria, I'm not going to say that it doesn't, matter for these guys because, yes, they want to compete at the high level. Yes, scouts want to see you compete at the high level. But for the most part, if they're talking about you being a lottery selection, the scouts, the GMs, the people who get the intel, they have saw just every college game that you have played. They have saw where you have been at the highest moments in your college career. So they have probably come down, seen you in your conference championship games and things like that. They've saw, when the team is not doing well, they've gotten the interviews to see how you respond there. So Hoopsteria, is as big as it is for the lottery selections, you just want to go out there and you want to hoop, period. Like you just want to go out, hoop, play free, and just let the things kind of work out the way that they're going to work out. But I don't think that it's something that's necessarily going to impact you. Like, if you're CKC, Jalen Snow, Jamison Johnson, Lamarian Sherwood, there shouldn't be any pressure to say, okay, I got to take my team all the way down to the quad. Like that's the only way that I'm going to be a lottery selection. Like that's just incorrect because I think about, an example in 2017 with Martell Fultz. He was on Washington's team and they didn't even make the tournament. Okay. And he was still the number one pick in the draft. Now, again, you still got to go through the pre-draft selection and they got to talk to you, all those things like that. But scouts and GMs had saw enough to go, okay, this is our number one guy. And so, with CKC, Jalen Snow, Jamison Johnson, Lamarian Sherwood, and whoever else that you have in the lottery or whatever, there's people that have already just done enough intel. So, a round of games, I don't think necessarily impacts their draft stock like that. I think, again, you're going to have to look at the players that are slated to go later. Those are the players that you're going to see really that they need to go out and perform well in these games to increase their draft stock, because now we're talking about, just a couple more M's or two if you're able to get up the draft board. And so that is going to be huge, for those players. And so next, I think another thing to think about when it comes down to, these players going into Hoopsteria, especially these top players, is the injury concerns. And so just going back to Lamarian Sherwood, the injury that he dealt with, and one of the shows that I had was, okay, he had the injury, does it impact his draft stock? And I think that a scout had said that no, I think we're pretty much sold on who Lamarian Sherwood is, and I think that that's absolutely true for the most part. Like I think that yes, an injury may make a team be maybe a little bit more skeptical if it's something that can be, something for the long haul, something that can be career ending. Then I think that yes, that's something that maybe that impacts you. And so hopefully nobody gets out there and gets injured or anything like that. But if you have dealt with an injury going into Hoopsteria, you're a little banged up. Like I don't think that that's going to necessarily impact your draft, stock. And even if you do have a major injury, there's still a chance that you're going to go, pretty high in the draft because I think back at Michael Porter Jr. When he was at Missouri, dealt with the back injury, cost him really the entire season for the most part. He was able to come back the last 2 games of the season, if I'm not mistaken. He played in their tournament game, and then he came back and he played in their first round of the tournament, and he came off the bench. All right. And I think he was still drafted number 14th overall. And look what Denver got. They got a guy that certainly helps stretch the floor around Nikola Jokic. And so, look, that is a situation where, maybe he probably would have gone higher in the draft. I mean, nobody knows what would have happened, but yeah, he probably would have gone higher. But still, here's a guy that was still one of the top selections, I think, in his draft class. And so that is something to think about when it comes down to injuries and Hoopsteria. And then again, just thinking about it more like, again, there's no pressure on players to go out there and play just out of themselves, right? Because I think of another player that just didn't necessarily have the best tournament, and that was Ja Morant. In fact, I think that they were an early exit, and here was a lottery selection as well. And so, again, when we're looking at this, there is going to be a lot of hype. Yes, we're going to be talking about these players potentially being number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, right? The hype is going to be there. But I think for the players out there, they just have got to focus on just playing winning basketball. There is really nothing else that you can do to sway somebody to go out and say, all right, you're our guy. I think for the most part, teams have done enough homework, or they should have, right? That's in question with the way some of these franchises are ran. But for the most part, I think that they have done enough homework on you that they know this is a player that we definitely want to get in our building. This is what we want to do as far as how we want to build our team out, because that's another thing that I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes down to the number 1 pick or number 2 or whatever. It all has to come down to just it has to be a fit. Like I know that you're going for talent, but it also needs to fit, because if you're getting, a couple players at the same position, what are you thinking as a GM? What are you going to do to get the team in the right direction? So there's several other things that factor into it. So the the short answer to really the long video here is that Hoopsteria does not really impact the potential of a player going number 1, in my opinion. But you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And look, as we always say, see the game and be the game. I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.